Well, KiwiFarms is now been taken off the clear net. Ding dong, the witch is dead. What's up, guys? Thorn here, and this is a monumental event that I just felt like I needed to weigh in on, since I too have been the victim of KiwiFarms' bullshit. So I just figured I'd offer my 2 cents here. Basically, KiwiFarms has been taken off the clear net. It's still on the dark web, but you really have to actively go digging for it. Like, I even checked DuckDuckGo, and they don't even have any search results. Like, you have to pretty much just know how to find them on the dark web, because they are not easily accessible anymore. And it's gonna stay that way. Basically, here's what happened for those of you who aren't in the loop right now. The conquering hero in this case is actually a streamer, a female streamer. Don't know if she's a cis woman or if she is a trans activist, a trans rights activist, but I don't know if she's trans herself. Anyway, her name is Keffels. She basically got targeted by KiwiFarms because she was a trans rights activist, if not a trans person herself. And she started a trend on Twitter to sabotage Cloudflare's share prices in order to compel them to drop KiwiFarms. And it worked. Cloudflare's stock price tanked, and Cloudflare eventually caved. I mean, true, it wasn't just the stock prices that caused Cloudflare to drop KiwiFarms, it was also the fact that as she was actually gaining traction in her movement, the people on KiwiFarms just started to crank up their harassment to 11, as if it wasn't already cranked up to 11 to begin with, but by KiwiFarms standards, they just cranked it up to 11, and Cloudflare realized that now there was actually an imminent threat to life. Like, they might actually go homicidal, which, I mean, there is that one line of the sand that KiwiFarms up to this point has not crossed. They haven't actually physically killed anyone, although they have driven several people to suicide. But at least they haven't actually murdered anybody. But Cloudflare actually believed that because they were getting so desperate and actually, quote, fighting back, I mean, even though they clearly were the ones who started it, that they might actually cross that line, and so that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Cloudflare, and they eventually dropped hosting services. So KiwiFarms is still around, but they're exclusively on the dark web. And the consensus is that this will render KiwiFarms a husk of its former self, unable to do 1% of the damage they were previously capable of. And even that site's leader and founder admits that is the most likely scenario. Anyway, Joshua Moon, the owner and founder of KiwiFarms, posted his own rant on his own website, because that's the only platform he has, and it's a fraction of what it used to be just a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, he posted his own rant on his own site, where he complains that the actions of his site's users were wrongfully attributed to the site as a whole. Now, I just want to address this little argument here, and I just want to say that is absolute bullshit, and I'm gonna tell you why. The site repeatedly, over the years, has repeatedly attempted to circumvent accountability for its toxicity and its being a cesspool of hate and bigotry by relying on the fact that it's just a website and therefore is protected by Section 230, which basically says that the only way you can hold the site accountable for most illegal things, copyright infringement being a notable exception, is if they are the ones who is if the site's employees, in this case Joshua Moon, are the ones who actually posted that stuff in the first instance. Anybody who just joins the site, starts posting, and then uses it, the site isn't liable for 99% of the possible laws that user could possibly break. And yeah, I will admit that is the law. Problem is that KiwiFarms is really just abusing that shield. I just want to point out that there is a huge difference between what Section 230 was actually designed for and what KiwiFarms is actually doing. See, KiwiFarms has long been marketed as a haven for people to coordinate harassment, doxing, and hate campaigns. And that keyword there is marketed. This isn't just the users using the site for that purpose. This is the site itself marketing itself as being intended for that purpose. That's the difference. And if you don't believe me, if you don't think that deserves to be a difference, let me give you a hypothetical example that involves one of the few scruples that many unscrupulous people still have: the sexual exploitation of children. Even if you're a hardened hooligan, even if you're a street gang member and a drug addict and a murderer and a rapist serving a life sentence in prison, you almost always feel like pedophilia is crossing what few lines you think there are. So let me give you that example. Imagine if there was a website called kidsonlyfans.com, and it was basically OnlyFans, except that it was designed for people under the age of 18 to post naked pictures of themselves, or for parents to take naked pictures of their children and post them on kidsonlyfans.com. Now imagine if, when they inevitably get confronted with a shit show, and they just throw their hands up and say, hey, we're just a site. We don't actually put kids porn on the internet ourselves. People just come onto our site and do it. Obviously, that's not how it works, jackass. I mean, it's one thing for child pornography to exist on the internet under the noses of the sites that inadvertently host them, and then because the sites just overlooked it, it's easy to say that the site itself isn't culpable here. But when the site is specifically designed to and is marketed as being a place where you can do these things, that excuse is lost. You see, Section 230 was originally designed for sites that wanted to make a good faith attempt to curate and moderate their content, but where some illegal actions would inevitably fall through the cracks. It was not designed for sites that were specifically designed for people to do absolutely shitty things with impunity. That's not how it... that it technically applies to KiwiFarms, because the limited letter of the law didn't specifically exclude bad faith sites like that. Not that how would you even statutorily define a bad faith site to include a site like KiwiFarms or 8kun, but to exclude good faith mistake? How would you even put that in the law anyway? But here's the thing you need to keep in mind. You rely so much on the limited letter of the law, but that you weren't busted by the cops. You weren't taken to court in this case. It was the court of public opinion that caused you to lose Cloudflare, and the court of public opinion sees right through your bullshit when you try to argue that you're protected by Section 230. We see right through your bullshit, Josh. It doesn't save you. Maybe it saves you legally, but it does not save you ethically or morally when you specifically set your site up for that purpose. Now, to the extent that Moon offers justifications besides Section 230, his excuses are still complete bullshit. Here's just one example. When asked about the cyberbullying issue, the cyberbullying that occurs constantly on his site, in addition to claiming Section 230 immunity, he also relies on the fact that federal bullying laws only really apply to people being bullied into not going to school. And he specifically he insists that as long as there's no school involved, it's not bullying. Well, again, he relies on the limited letter of the law when it was... But the court of public opinion doesn't have to give two shits about that. No, fuck you, Josh. This is bullying, plain and simple. This is cyberbullying. Deal with it. And then there's his attempt at providing an additional justification behind doxing. Again, that's something that site is primarily known for. And this one especially hits home for me because the bullshit excuse that is used by KiwiFarms to justify why his behavior doesn't even qualify as doxing is the same bullshit excuse that a lot of my haters have used to justify why their doxing me isn't doxing. So this is actually especially hard hits home for me. Anyway, he insists that the behavior that typically occurs on that site isn't doxing simply because the information being shared is already publicly and legally accessible. He points to phone books as a prime example about how that's been sharing people's names, addresses, and phone numbers for over a century. It's absolutely not the same thing. Like, earlier I told you how there was a big difference between good faith moderation of websites that Section 230 was actually designed for and setting the site up specifically for this kind of bullshit, and how I explained that there is a huge difference there. Well, likewise, there's a huge difference here, too. First, let's start with the strict definitions, because you tend to focus a lot on that. Webster Dictionary defines doxing as to publicly identify or publish private information about someone, especially as a form of punishment or revenge. Boom. Ultimate checkmate, right? It's not doxing if it's public. It has to be private in order to be doxing. Checkmate, right? Not really. Yeah, that is Webster's definition for doxing. But do you know how Webster defines private? Because it's not as obvious as you probably think. Private as an adjective, as opposed to a noun, which refers to a soldier in the military of the lowest rank. Anyway, as a noun, Webster has multiple different definitions for private. But they are generally grouped into 4 general categories. As you can see from the screenshot that I'm posting right now, categories 2 and 4 are completely inapplicable here, so we can just go ahead and take both of those categories off the table. Now, category 3 is what most of the doxers, including KiwiFarms, like to think is the applicable definition whenever they're defending their actions as not being doxing. But if category 1 is the applicable definition, well, then your actions do indeed constitute doxing, don't they? Here's the thing, though. In order to be considered doxing, only one, not both, of those categories, either category of definition for private, can be sufficient for your actions to constitute doxing. If you had to pry into my medical records in order to get the information, then that would be category 3 private, but it's still doxing. Even by your admission, it would still be doxing. But even if it's just personally identifiable information, like my name, address, or phone number, then it is still doxing even if you got that information legally. To prove that is the case, you need only look to other online dictionaries for ample proof. The succinctly named dictionary.com specifically uses the phrase "a person's identifying information" when giving the definition for doxing, regardless of whether it was public or private beforehand, and regardless of whether you broke any laws in acquiring that information. And if you're still not convinced, let me point you to a song from the 1990s, a country music song, from a singer called Toby Keith. It was called "How Do You Like Me Now?" I'd like to play a couple of lyrics from that song.
Yeah, I was always a crazy one, broke into the stadium and I wrote your number on the 50-yard line. Under your number I wrote, call for a good time.
Now, Toby probably got that information from a phone book, didn't he? In fact, he probably got, that phone book that you hold up as a prime example of how publicly available personally identifying information has been done for years and years. And it's always been acceptable. Yeah, he probably got it from there. But that's beside the point. The point isn't that he got the number through illicit means, it's the fact that he used that otherwise legitimately acquired information in order to pull an extremely cruel and malicious prank on his high school crush. I can't stress this enough. Doxing is when you share people's personal information or private information just to inflict harm upon them. That's what makes it doxing, not just the fact that it's public versus private, it's the fact that you're just doing it for no other reason than because lol. That is the threshold for whether it's considered doxing or not. And that applies both to KiwiFarms and to the people who've doxed me. So overall, Moon has no leg to stand on here. In the strict, limited letter of the law, KiwiFarms is not liable for 99% of the stuff that goes on his site. But that's just it. You're just getting off on a technicality. In the court of public opinion, which is what drove you into the dark web, they're not bound by that shit. So, that was my 2 cents on KiwiFarms being driven off the ClearNet and being driven onto the dark web. So, before I sign out, I have an open letter to one specific user on KiwiFarms called Zelxander. I'm currently in federal court because he infringed on my copyright. Oh yeah, Acerthorn filing a copyright infringement lawsuit. Stop the fucking press. Yes, I'm filing a copyright infringement lawsuit. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, you said in a previous email that you wanted trial by combat. I said no. So you posted on KiwiFarms saying that you're currently looking for a way that you can file in the case and ask the judge to force me into trial by combat. I'm going to tell you how you can do that. In the Northern District of California, which is where the case is currently pending, you can file using the ECF, the electronic case filing system, from the comfort of your own home, in your fucking underwear, and you don't even need a judge's permission to do it. Most U.S. federal courts require, they either just don't allow pro se people, that is people without a lawyer, they either don't allow those guys to file ECF at all, or they usually require you to get leave of court to do so. But in the Northern District of California, you just already have permission. No judge's order necessary. So there is that. Now, if you're worried about how are you supposed to format the request, well, you're in luck. The Northern District of California also has a pro bono office for pro se litigants, people who are representing themselves in court, where lawyers can talk to you over the phone and walk you through the steps and make sure you do all you cross all your T's and dot all your I's. If you're gonna book an appointment with them, make sure you ask that you not be given Deborah, since I'm using her right now, so she obviously would have a conflict of interests. So anyway, and there's one other thing. Those 2 things are the biggest reason why I prefer to file in California if the case can have jurisdiction there, because those are 2 obvious huge advantages. But anyway, there's also one other thing. There's a PDF document on that court's website called the Pro Se Handbook. I'll post a link in the description to that PDF document, and if you read through that, it should provide a lot of useful information. Well, that was basically my rant on KiwiFarms finally getting its just desserts after a fucking decade. Took you long enough. I'm honestly surprised you lasted as long as you did, considering, considering, like, as I said earlier, the fact that the site is specifically dedicated to this kind of bullshit, makes you far more culpable than nearly any other site protected by Section 230. But hey, better late than never. Took you long enough, but it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. So with that being said, I am Acer Thorn, and I'll see you guys next time